foreign partners are undertaking key actions in their countries that are helping as well.
Thanks, Blas. Just a reminder, we're figuring out the kinks in our system. If folks can use the Q&A, or sorry, the raise your hand function instead of the chat, we will call on you to ask your question directly. So we'll go to CBS Camilo next.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Blas, you mentioned that Mexico and Guatemala are deploying large numbers of law enforcement officials to their borders. Can you just say specifically what those law enforcement officials are doing? Are they stopping and processing migrants who are hoping to travel to the U.S.? And if so, what happens to them? And can you also say whether you're attributing the current lower numbers compared to earlier last week to that enforcement by Mexico and Guatemala? Thank you.
Yeah, so I would obviously refer you to those governments for information about what they are doing on their southern border. I will just note that we have been coordinating very closely with them, and we also saw both governments undertake these actions, in the lead up to the potential lifting of Title 42 in December as well. In terms of what we attribute the reduction to, Camilo, like I said, I think it's still too early to draw firm conclusions. We are closely watching what's happening. We are confident that the plan that we have developed across the U.S. government to address these flows will work over time, and we are again going to be keeping a very, very close eye on all of this as it unfolds.
Thank you so much. Next, we'll go to Jesus Garcia, El Diario. If you can unmute yourself.
Thank you for doing this. Can you hear me well? I'm not sure.
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry. So Secretary Mayorkas said yesterday that it is too soon to know or call the new normal at the border, but when can we consider the new normal at the border, and what conditions are you waiting for to consider the new normal? And also, what are the challenges that you are facing against possible criminals and drug traffickers at the border with the alert that you are facing on immigration? Thank you.
Yeah, great question. So, I think just in general, as I mentioned at the top, we recognize that there is a historic number of people displaced in our hemisphere. And so, we, again, believe that it is too soon to draw firm conclusions, although, of course, the decreased level of encounters at the border, we hope reflect, both an appreciation of the new consequences that are in place for unlawful entry at the border, as well as the enforcement actions being taken by our foreign partners to, address migration through their country. In terms of the smuggling networks and the, cartels, what I would note is that, over the last few years, we've seen a fundamental change in how smuggling networks operate in the region. And while it used to be the case that human smugglers and narcotics traffickers were different people, today, we are seeing the drug cartels increasingly, directing the movement of people, not just in Mexico, but throughout the hemisphere, including through the Darien. And that is a fundamental change in how smuggling networks operate that we have been working with our colleagues at the Department of State, the Department of Defense, the Department of Justice, and also our foreign partners to attack these networks, in a comprehensive way.
Thanks, Blas. Next, we'll go to NBC's Julia Ainsley.
Hey, thank you so much. Last week, Chief Ortiz told reporters in El Paso that I think it was 5 of his sectors at the time were over capacity. Do you know anything about capacity inside Border Patrol processing centers along the border? I know there was a prediction that when Title 42 lifted, it would take longer to process migrants, even if they were eventually going to be removed. And so even though the numbers are lower, I'm wondering where you stand capacity-wise and if you still have concerns about overcrowding.
Great question, Julia. So, we are significantly below last week's in custody levels as of this morning, but our in custody levels are still relatively high. I would say, it is true that Title VIII processing takes longer than Title 42 processing. And of course, we are also, running expedited removal out of CBP facilities, which is a process that can take a few days. I would note, though, that, over the last couple of years, we have really significantly accelerated the expedited removal process and our ability to issue notices to appear. So, we are managing through the numbers we are seeing so far, I think, extraordinarily well. And I think that's a real tribute to the men and women from U.S. Customs and Border Protection who, are on the front lines doing this.
Thanks, Blas. We're going to try to get through a few more. Next, we'll go to the Hills. Rafael Bernal. You can unmute yourself.
There we go. Thanks for having this, and thank you for having it on the record again. That's great. So in the lead up last week to the end of Title 42, there was maybe it was a little bit short of a mass panic about it, but it was just a little bit short. One of the primary sources that was telling us that there was going to be a quote unquote surge with the end of Title 42 was DHS. It was either your intelligence or you were overselling the issue. But it really precipitated a lot of people who are talking about an invasion and all that kind of language. What do you think of DHS's role in promoting that kind of anti-immigrant sentiment and language?
Well, so I would have to, disagree that DHS plays any role in promoting anti-immigrant sentiments or language. What I will say is that, whenever there's a change in policy at the border, we have seen, smuggling networks weaponize those changes to spread disinformation and drive migration throughout the hemisphere. And, we did see, in point of fact, a significant surge in migration in the days leading up to the lifting of Title 42, and that surge was really within the planning parameters that we have been, talking about within DHS and within the government for some time. So, I think we saw the surge that we were expecting to see in the days leading up to the lifting of Title 42. And since then, I think what we've seen is a combination of the consequences that we have imposed on unlawful entry, and the work being done by our foreign partners, to enforce their borders and these flows, as well as the lawful pathways that we've made available. I think all of these things together, have helped reduce encounters the last few days. But as we continue to say, it is still way too early to draw any firm conclusions, and we are going to watch this very closely moving forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Blas. Next, we'll go to the Washington Post's Nick Muroff. If you can unmute yourself.
Hey, good morning. This is a question for Blas, I think. Could you give us like a one-day snapshot of encounters, removals, the number of people, a number of fear claimants to whom the new ineligibility bar was applied? So just like a one-day snapshot of outcomes. And then also wanted to ask, what is the department's plan if the new ineligibility bar is enjoined?
Yeah, so I don't have all of those numbers in front of me, Nick. I can tell you that we have averaged, below 5,000 encounters each of the last 3 days. And obviously that's, less than half of the more than 10,000 we had encountered each day in the 3 days leading up to the lifting of Title 42. And we have removed, and repatriated thousands of people, over the last 3 days. So, these processes, are working. In terms of, the litigation that is out there, I'm not going to speculate about what's going to happen in those cases. We are, confident that we are, operating well within our legal statutory authorities, and we will, defer to the Department of Justice on next steps in terms of litigation if and when there is an injunction in that case. I would say that, and again, just reiterate that we are under litigation for almost all of the things that we do and all of the measures we're trying to implement from both sides here. And that, this just shows just how dysfunctional and broken our immigration system is and why we need Congress to step up in a bipartisan manner to resolve these issues.
Thanks, Blas. We'll squeeze in one last one. CNN's Priscilla Alvarez, if you can unmute.
Hi, all. Thanks for doing this. Blas, if you could provide a little more detail on the numbers that you mentioned. You said hundreds of Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans have been sent to or deported to Mexico. If you could provide some numbers there, as well as what your in custody number is as of this morning. And then separately, in a filing over the weekend, in the parole case, there was mention of returning to notice to report. Has that procedure started? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for those questions, Priscilla. I don't have the exact in custody number in front of me. I can tell you, though, that it is significantly down from where we were, just a few days ago in the lead up to the lifting of Title 42. I believe that we have repatriated more than 2,400 people to Mexico over the last 3 days. And, as well, in terms of, I'm sorry, Priscilla, I lost the last piece of your question. Can you ask it again?
Yeah, have you returned to using notice to report in the absence of parole following that court ruling?
No, we have not, returned to the issuing of notices to report. We are currently issuing notices to appear. As I think I mentioned on Friday, we are concerned about the potential impact of the Florida litigation on the length of time it takes us to process. And again, I think it's important for everybody to know that, regardless of what the way we process people, every individual we encounter is thoroughly vetted against our national security and public safety systems. And, we, detain any individual who might pose a threat, either because they have an outstanding warrant or because they have any affiliation or association with terrorism. So, we, are prepared to, I think, fight that injunction, and obviously we'll know more in the days and weeks to come.
Thanks, Blas. Thanks to everyone for joining today. If we didn't get to your question, feel free to email us at mediainquiry@hq.dhs.gov. As a reminder, this call was on the record. Thank you so much for joining today. Thank you to Blas, Martha, and Melissa.